Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ranking Member Kamek, and to all of our witnesses, our first responders, our firefighters, our sheriffs, all of you who are here with us today. It's greatly appreciated the work that you do. Sheriff Gator Deloach, you mentioned response to hurricanes and how that affects you. Others of you have mentioned other disasters, how they affect your different regions. In Iowa, we don't get hurricanes unless they're called derechos, which are inland hurricanes. And so some of the comments that I've heard today have talked about resiliency, and I've heard a lot about the Firstnet system and using, cellular communication. But in a derecho, I can tell you that here in Iowa and central Iowa affected some of our larger cities, and cellular towers, cellular communication was unavailable. As a state senator, I've put through legislation for broadband. Our governor, Governor Reynolds, has just put through $100 million to broadband. So my question really, and Dr. Rodriguez, maybe you can answer this, or Sheriff Deloach can answer. Should we have, in order to have resiliency, should we not have also redundancy of communication systems, because the same natural or unnatural disaster is not going to affect both areas. And this also leads into the cybersecurity arena as well. What's the possibility of satellites being taken out in outer space? What does that do to our communication system? We have seen US companies purchased by the Chinese Communist Party. And if a Chinese Communist Party purchases a US system, or for example, Huawei and 5G as it's being developed, and the challenges with Huawei and security, I think all of these things are important as we develop a communication system and strategy, and hopefully we'll see that in this upcoming report. So if Dr. Rodriguez and Sheriff Deloach could answer that question briefly, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. Sheriff, I'll defer to you, and then I'll come in after you, if that's all right.
Certainly, thank you. That's an excellent question. I think one of the key components to focus on here is with the FirstNet build out, which coincidentally is almost complete in Putnam County, and we're nearing the final stages of completion here. One of the things that FirstNet brings that makes it so attractive is an additional layer of redundancy above and beyond our land mobile radio system, which allows it to serve as an adjunct to that to our traditional radio system, and even allows us to transmit data that we would normally transmit over our digital land mobile radio systems over a cellular or LTE network. With that in mind, and with the particular types of storms that you're talking about, it's difficult to to build out some type of infrastructure that could survive some type of a catastrophic, really powerful major hurricane, or some type of a 500-year storm. But that was something that FirstNet actually took into consideration whenever they were in the design and engineering phase. So certainly credit goes to them and everyone who had a hand in that.
Thank you. And before you answer, Dr. Rodriguez, as we've recently seen with the outage of Facebook, we know that these types of redundancies are necessary because one communication avenue may be susceptible. So Dr. Rodriguez, if you'd expand upon that, and thank you again for your testimony.
Absolutely. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Sheriff. In the district, our interoperability coordinator really develops our plan, and it's really based on the PACE framework, right? The primary, which is our radio system, the alternate, which is our cell system, our contingencies would be satellite, and then our emergency in a worst case scenario would be amateur radio runners. And so we follow that framework for our communications ecosystem here, and certainly with the National Capital Region, and we plan and we train to that. The other thing I would say is, at the national level, you're talking about state actors too, Congresswoman. I think as the national government, the federal government really examines national resiliency, particularly as part of its continuity of the economy framework, as was mandated in last year's NDA in Section 9603, I think it's really important for state and local authorities to be part of that planning process and that training process so that they know sort of at the last mile and how it does impact the residents, states, and local jurisdictions. Thank you.
This is an excellent point. So thank you so much for your testimony. And Madam Chair, thank you for indulging them to answer the questions despite my time having expired. And I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.